Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Before we get going here on a brand new episode of What's Your Mount Rushmore, always check out anything that we've done in the past at what'syourmountrushmore.com or check us out on all the socials, all the fun stuff, and make sure you follow us. Enjoy.
Welcome to What's Your Mount Rushmore podcast with hosts Mark Duval and John Hanson.
Are you kidding me?
Two old friends and knuckleheads discussing and covering their top 4 choices for any and all topics, making up their Mount Rushmore selections each week. Nothing is off limits. As you listen, remember, we always want to know, what's your Mount Rushmore?
I wonder, will we ever see each other again?
Who knows? God willing, we'll all meet again in Spaceballs 2. The search for more money.
Hello. Oh, yeah. Hey, my mic's on. Shit. John, is your mic on?
Oh, yeah. Let me check. Yeah, I believe it is.
All right. We're in business. We're up and running. And thanks for checking back in with us. We have a new topic this week. Welcome back to a new episode, a new topic on What's Your Mount Rushmore. I am one of the hosts, Mark Duval.
Yes, and thankfully both of our microphones are on and working as far as we know. So the other host, John Hanson, welcome back to this episode. We're well over 50 episodes. We're actually probably mid-50s, maybe even closing in on 60 episodes now. So we're excited about that.
Crazy.
We bounce around our topics quite a bit. We've covered just about everything pop culture related you can think of. So we're coming back around to movies with this episode. And the topic is specifically movie sequels, which is something, actually, we've talked about movie sequels a little bit in past episodes. And I mean, that's sort of what teased up this idea that we would do an episode that highlighted, our favorite movie sequels and the sequel itself, being good as a standalone movie.
Well, it's funny, too, because the concept of a movie sequel can either lead you to a disaster or it can lead to where you're like, damn, way to follow it up.
Sure.
And I think probably, do you think it's safe to say more times than not, movie sequels fall on their face?
I would say that more often than not, when I see that they are coming out with a sequel to a movie that I loved, I'm usually sort of disappointed because I'm like, I know it's going to suck. They're going to take characters and actors and a story that I liked a lot, and they're going to ruin it. That's usually my thought. Sometimes I'm wrong. Thankfully, sometimes the sequels are good. I think everyone on my list, I was probably excited when they came out. And actually, you mentioning bad sequels, we should make a mental note because that might be a fun episode to do too. The worst movie sequels.
Probably be a bigger list to pull from to get 4 picks from because there's a lot of just turds.
There's a lot of turds. And I'm not going to go down the list right now because I do think that'd be a fun episode. So we'll save that. But bad movie sequels actually would be a good one. Watch. So listener, watch for that down the road.
Well, and one quick thing, and I'm probably stating the obvious here as it relates to the very topic of movie sequels, is when I think of a movie sequel, I think of the original movie, the original story, and now it's continuing. I do not consider remakes like a reboot of a movie. That's not a sequel to me.
True.
And I think I'm speaking for both of us. Mine are movie sequels, a continuation of the story that was introduced to you already.
Mine too. It's a new story based around the same, characters and same premise as the original, but a new story. And, I'm trying to think now on my list off the top of my head, because the actors sometimes can change with sequels depending on the movie. But if it's a true sequel, that's okay. If it's a true continuation of the story, not a remake. And there's been a lot of those you mentioned. We could do an episode of good reboots and bad reboots because they rebooted like Karate Kid. They rebooted. Did they do Footloose? Or am I thinking of something else?
No, they did. There's a lot. I mean, in fact, there's a lot of heat just generally directed at Hollywood. I feel like the last decade, where it's like, are they not interested in original scripts anymore? Because everything just seems to be remade. Yeah, and it's never usually as good as the first.
I always assume it's a money grab.
Straight cash, homie.
We kind of have to.
Yeah.
So, well, that being said, with the topic of movie sequels at the top of mind today, why don't you have the honors and get this bad boy rolling? I'm very interested to see what you picked as the listener knows, we don't know each other's picks and we kind of fly by the seat of our pants. Sometimes we match, sometimes we don't. So I'm very curious, what you came up with.
Yeah, it's possible we could match on something this time, but I'm not sure if we will, because I made a point to pick some that I think you would not pick. And I also have some movies on my list that I think might actually be a little bit better than their originals, in fact. And the first one on my list definitely, for me personally, fits that description. It's the movie Aliens. That's the plural, Aliens.
Interesting.
It came out in 1986. It was a sequel to the original Alien movie from 1979.
Wow, I didn't see this pick coming from 5 miles away, let alone. Wow. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I would. Interesting that you caught me off guard with Aliens.
Well, I tell you what, this movie was actually on in my head recently, because we watched my wife and I, we watched these. My wife Susan, she guest starred on an episode we did a while back with slasher movies, and I've mentioned before that she's a big fan of horror movies. And there's this series, I don't even know the name of the series, that we watch on a streamer that talks about horror movies and the history of horror movies, and each episode covers a different sort of style of horror movie. And they had one that was about space horror or space thriller type movies, and they talked a lot about the movie Aliens, and that kind of brought it back to my brain and kind of reminded me of this movie and how good it really was. It was written and directed both by James Cameron, believe it or not.
Yeah.
This was the very next movie he produced and put together after he wrote and directed the original Terminator movie. So this was his follow-up to Terminator, and he was not personally involved in the original Alien movie, but that did star Sigourney Weaver. And Sigourney Weaver was the only survivor of an alien attack on her spaceship in that first movie. So since she was the survivor, of course, she gets to come back and star in the sequel. And lo and behold, she finds herself on another spaceship that gets attacked. But this time it's not an alien attacking them. It's aliens.
Just tell me one thing, Burke. You're going out there to destroy them, right? Not to study. Not to bring back, but to wipe them out.
That's the plan.
Movement! Talk to me, Hudson!
I got signals, I got readings in front and behind.
There's nothing back here.
Look, I'm telling you, there's something moving and it ain't us.
Get them out of there!
There's movement all over the place.
Aliens. This time, it's war.
It's creepy too. These are creepy, intense movies too.
Very creepy, very intense. It was a big hit movie too. It was took in 183 million bucks at the box office. The budget was less than 20 million, so it made lots of money. It usually appears on lists of one of the top movies of the 80s and definitely one of the top sci-fi movies of the 80s or even of all time. Sigourney Weaver was nominated for an Academy Award with this movie. So
it's iconic.
It was a big movie for her. She was already kind of a star from the original Alien movie, and this kind of kept that star role going. Of course, she was in Ghostbusters too, wasn't she? The original.
I believe so. Yes.
So she had a good run there in the mid '80s, and it also made a bigger star of James Cameron, because the Terminator was a big movie, a hit movie, but it wasn't a big blockbuster the way this one was, and the way the future, Terminator 2 became. So this kind of made James Cameron into a highly sought after star as well.
I just connected these dots. It's obvious, but it just kind of hit me. The James Cameron Sigourney Weaver tie, and then you fast forward all these years later when he did Avatar.
Yeah,
and he brought her back. So I always think that's kind of cool, because there's a lot to be said in those kind of casting decisions, because they clearly liked working with each other. The rumor is James Cameron does know, in fact, how to put a movie together.
Yeah, he does. He's got that going for him.
He's made a couple of good ones.
Yeah, he's made a few big ones. The funny thing I read about this movie is, one of the stars was Bill Paxton, who we've talked a little bit about in the past on episodes. But I love Bill Paxton. I think he was an awesome actor. Gone too soon. Kind of miss his style. He could do comedy, he could do drama, he could do action stuff. So Bill Paxton is one of only 2 actors in cinematic history to have been killed by an alien, a Terminator, and a Predator.
Wow.
because he's starred in all those movies and was killed off.
Interesting stat line. Wow. Yeah, that's a unique, thing on the IMDb page.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Bill.
Yeah, he's a good egg, that dude.
And he was also Chet in Weird Science.
And he was also in this is you got to dig a little deep on this one because it's not a great movie, but it's kind of a fun watch. It was a movie called Trespass that had Ice-T and Ice Cube in it.
Nice.
And it's and Bill Paxton was a firefighter treasure hunting in the hood in a building that was deserted. They thought gold was in this building because they found a treasure map in a building that was on fire.
Wow.
But it kind of is a fun watch though because it's a real old throwback and you see the early days of Ice Cube and Ice-T acting.
I don't remember that one at all.
Oh, wow. Okay. I love that you came out of the gate with a surprise. I had no idea we'd be talking about James Cameron and Alien and Aliens as a sequel topic, but it's very appropriate. So good choice. I'll get rolling then. I'll start with my oldest one and probably my most obvious one. And this brings us back to 74. And I'm talking about Godfather Part 2. It's the legendary follow-up to what was already an iconic film. And Part 2 didn't disappoint. It won a measly 6 Oscars. Godfather 2.
Wow.
And that included Best Director, Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, which was De Niro, Best Adaptive Screenplay, Best Art Direction, and Best Original Dramatic Score. Pacino was also nominated for Best Actor. He didn't win. Something called Art Carney won for Harry and Tonto.
What was that?
What?
A movie, the road trip movie about a dude and his cat.
Harry and Tonto? I know Art Carney. Art Carney was from The Honeymooners with Ralph Cramden.
But when I read that, I'm like, really? That's who beat out Pacino for Best Actor?
Some dude and his cat.
And again, it just kind of shows. Yes, it's like you always include these kind of accolades when they work in your favor. Who wouldn't want to mention you won a Grammy, you won an Oscar, you won a Golden Globe, right? But sometimes when you really comb through history and you see some of the people who did win for certain, whether it's music or movies, you're like, okay, how much stock are we supposed to put in these awards?
Especially with the Best Picture. There's been a lot of Best Picture winners that were clearly not nearly as good as some of the ones that did not win.
No, and I think sometimes the Academy is going way too out of their own way to try to, pick and choose these artistic visions. But in this case, they did get it right. So I will say that Godfather Part 2 it's remarkable. The whole story, and I think why it's so cool is because of the nature of the movie itself. It's obviously about the Sicilian inspired mafia coming to America and their role in New York and the East Coast and the crime families and the gambling and the women and the you name it. Everything but the depiction is done so elegantly. It makes the mafia look glamorous. It makes it look respectable in a weird way. What they do isn't, but how they carry themselves is. In Godfather Part 2, going back to De Niro, I mean, he's incredible at depicting a young Vito Corleone in the early days of moving to New York City from Sicily, and the plot line itself of Michael's ambition to grow the family business, the mafia, and the dark circumstances and decisions that come from Michael, especially about how he deals with his brother Fredo's betrayal towards Michael specifically, and the family.
I've always taken care of you, Fredo.
Taking care of me? You're my kid brother and you take care of me? Did you ever once think about that? Send Fredo off to do this, send Fredo off to do that. I'm your older brother, Mike, and I was stepped over.
That's the way Pop wanted it.
It ain't the way I wanted it. I can handle things. I'm smart. Like dumb, I'm smart, and I want respect.
I knew that you would pick this movie, so that's the reason why I did not. I knew for a fact that you would choose Godfather 2. There's 2 movies I think that are going to be on your list. This was the first one that I thought for sure would be. And because we don't know each other's picks, we can only guess. I left this one off my list, and if you had not picked it, then we would have both had egg on our face. But of course, I knew you would pick it. So
if neither one of us picked Godfather Part 2 for a movie sequel related Mount Rushmore podcast, we have no business doing this podcast.
No, we do not.
We would have lost all our street cred immediately.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's a fabulous movie, and we talked a little bit about the movie in our what was it? Our episode about New Year's scenes from movies. So it wasn't. Yeah, we did. Yep. I was trying to think of which episode that was, but yeah, it didn't have to make my list because I knew it would be on yours. And that gave me a chance to pick something else.
I'm kind of glad because I kind of had that train of thought too, going, man, this is too obvious. I'm kind of glad I got to say it first then, and I'm making you have to pivot and call an audible.
Yeah. Well, we do sometimes. There are times where we talk a lot about one particular topic, whether it's a person, a song, a band, a movie. And I think, we've mentioned that movie a couple of times in previous podcasts, so I don't really want to go that route again. Even though it maybe is a legitimate pick for me, I'm just going to push it aside. But in this case, it wasn't like that. This case, I just knew you were going to pick it, so I didn't have to. And it gave me a chance to add an extra pick on my list.
There you go. Well, speaking of picks on your list, what's next on that list of yours there, kid?
The movie Aliens was probably the one that would have replaced Godfather, that Godfather 2. So that one was probably the one I put on there. This next one was already on my list. It is from 2008. It is The Dark Knight. And
wow, okay, you're going comic book.
Well, yeah, and this one is not just any comic book. I think this movie, it's the sequel to The Batman Begins. They kind of did the Batman movies in chunks. Basically either the person who directed them or the person who played Batman. Basically Bruce Wayne Batman. And in this case, it was the Christian Bale era of Batman. And The Dark Knight to me is not just a fabulous sequel. I think it's probably, and a lot of people would agree, it's probably the best comic book superhero movie that's ever been made, because it stands alone so well as a movie in and of itself. It was directed by Christopher Nolan, who himself is no slouch. He's done a lot of great movies. Also had Gary Oldman, who we've talked about on this podcast too, and then Heath Ledger, who was outstanding as the Joker, and probably is one of the main reasons why this is such a great movie. Heath Ledger he
stole the show.
He did. He stole the show. He's absolutely outstanding.
You want to know how I got these scars? My father was a drinker. And one night, he goes off crazier than usual. He comes at me with the knife. Why so serious? Sticks the blade in my mouth. Let's put a smile on that face.
The role that basically cost him his life. I mean, a lot of people say that because of how dark he went in his own head, which kind of then spiraled him back into his drug use. And
yeah, a lot of people say that. I don't know if there's truth to that or if it's one of those Hollywood things. I mean, he had issues with prescription drugs most of his adult life. He was only 28 years old when he died. Can you believe that? I thought he was older than that.
It reminds me of the episode we did about dead rock stars and our Mount Rushmore of those. We talked about recording artists, but look how many things we were probably robbed of, because Heath Ledger was just born to be an actor. He was really good at it. And it's a bummer. Man, until you said that, I forgot he was only 28 years old, because that's what made me think of this. Man, we were robbed.
Yeah, his IMDb is not very long because he was only 28. He didn't get a chance to make a lot of the movies that he could have and should have made. He was very good in this movie, so good, in fact, that he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. He's only the second actor to ever win the award posthumously, because he did die shortly after wrapping the filming of this movie. It was probably only about less than 2 or 3 months after this movie wrapped that he died. He was already dead by the time this movie was out in the theaters and became such a big hit. Obviously, it was dedicated to him, and it did win a bunch of other awards too, but it was snubbed from the Best Picture Oscar. It did not get that. And when I say it was snubbed from being nominated. It wasn't even nominated.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
The very next year, they started nominating 10 movies for the Best Picture. So in today's world, they nominate 10 movies for the Best Picture Oscar. Back then, it was only 5. Yeah. And it's a lot of people blame, or I shouldn't say blame, but they gave credit to this movie because it should have been nominated. And the Academy said, you know, you're probably right. We need a bigger list of nominees. And thanks to this movie, there's now 10 nominees every year.
I'd be curious. I don't expect you to know this off the cuff, but of all the Batman movies, and there's been a lot, do you think it's safe to assume that The Dark Knight is the one that made the most money?
Well, it did make over $1 billion at the box office.
Did it really? Holy hell.
I think that's a worldwide number, but yeah.
And
it did.
I know that this is a weird take, but it's, and I'm not saying anyone celebrated this. It's just circumstance, and it was the reality of the actual situation. But Heath Ledger dying when he did, it's like, what bigger promotional tool could there have been to watch the movie that hadn't yet been released?
Yeah.
You know, so many people gravitated to it. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't have done good anyway. It's a killer movie, and it's a really well done. Everyone, I mean, Christian Bale, I love him as Batman too, by the way.
Yeah.
Because when Batman Begins came out, and it was Christian Bale's first attempt at Batman, I thought he destroyed that role. I always kind of held the candle to Michael Keaton as my favorite Batman. And I thought everyone else who had been trying, they were falling on their face. But then Christian Bale came along, and I went, whoa.
Part of it was Christopher Nolan's input too, I think, because he has that ability to make a darker movie. And here's the thing about the Batman. The Batman as a comic book hero versus, say, Superman or Wonder Woman or whoever else you want to put up there, the story of Batman has always been sort of a darker themed story. It's not always happy-go-lucky. The good guys struggle. It's just the way it is. And I think that's one reason why this movie was a hit too, is that it had that feel. It was called The Dark Knight, and it was kind of a dark movie. Yeah. A lot of credit goes to both Christian Bale and Heath Ledger, of course. But I think the director played a part in that too. Actually, I did have notes here. I didn't look down in my notes until you mentioned that. At the time this movie came out, it was the 4th highest grossing movie of all time. Wow. It, of course, has been surpassed since then. But so that to answer your question, I would say that, yes, it is probably the biggest Batman movie of all time. And maybe some of these, more recent Marvel movies have done better. So I'm not going to say that it's for sure one of the biggest comic book movies of all time. In terms of box office, personally, I believe it probably is the best comic book movie of all time.
I'm gonna piss you off here real quick. I'm gonna put you on the spot with a really hard question that you have to answer. You can only pick one, obviously. Who's a better Joker? Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger. Which one did you prefer?
Damn, that's a good question, because I do like both of them. I probably am going to lean. I'm going to say Heath Ledger just because it's on my list here, and he's a big part of why this movie is on my list. So I'm going to go with him for now. But it probably honestly depends on which one I've watched more recently. You know what I'm saying?
Oddly, though, I'm going to agree with you, and I never thought I'd say that, certainly publicly, because I love that Batman. I think it was from like '89 or something like that, the one with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. Now, that's a totally different take on how they approached filming Batman. It was more tongue-in-cheek, and it was a totally different way to depict the Joker, because Heath Ledger's version, way more dark.
Yeah.
Just way more evil.
Yes, way more evil.
But yeah, I wanted to spring that on you once we started rolling here because that's a great pick. It's not on my list, but I love the pick. Love the movies. And those are probably my 2 favorite Batman movies, now that I'm actually thinking about it.
I agree. I would say those are my 2 favorites too.
That's a good one, man. Well, I'll take us back. I just mentioned 1989, which I think is that Batman, but it certainly is the year that my next sequel came out, and it's Back to the Future Part 2.
Yeah.
And I've talked about Back to the Future before on different related topics on our podcast, and I'm pretty sure you saw this one coming too. I would have to say it's my personal favorite of the trilogy of Back to the Future is Part 2.
Really? I'm surprised.
And for a lot of reasons. One, it's when Elizabeth Shue replaced Claudia Wells as Marty's girlfriend, Jennifer. And it's not that I didn't like Claudia Wells as Jennifer, and the reason is kind of sad, actually. It wasn't supposed to be Elizabeth Shue's role. It was supposed to be Claudia Wells, but she was kind of put in a position because of the timing, choose to go star in the rest of the movies or tend to her mom, who was, sick and dying from cancer.
Oh, wow.
So it's not a very happy tale, but it was a huge introduction and part of Elizabeth Shue's, resume that kind of launched her in a different direction too. I want to make sure I'm clear. I do like all three. It's just, I think it edges out the other two because of the concept of experiencing the future through that movie, along with the excitement that came with the adventures of time travel with Marty and Doc Brown.
You've got to come back with me.
Where?
Back to the future.
Are we back?
We're back.
What do you mean we're in the future?
October 21st, 2015.
Wow. The future.
A Robert Zemeckis film. Back to the Future. Part 2.
The hoverboard replacing the skateboard. The Nike high tops that tie themselves. The jackets that you can get wet and they will dry themselves and custom fit themselves to you. The flying cars, most importantly, probably, because I think that almost became an expectation.
Yeah, that and the Jetsons are what promised that to us.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other reason I love it is because Back to the Future Part 2 also does have a really dark element to it. And it's that alternate current reality in 1985 that becomes of Biff, old Biff, stealing the Gray's Sports Almanac, using the time machine to go back to the 1960s version of Biff. And he gives him this book, which then allows Biff to become this just evil empire because he can't lose bets. And then he opens a casino and he's basically a criminal. Again, I'm such a nerd when it comes to Back to the Future that this was a no-brainer. These were just boom, boom, Godfather Part 2, Back to the Future Part 2, done.
Well, and I knew that you would have Godfather Part 2 on your list. This is the other one that I thought you might have on your list. I like it better than Back to the Future 3, but I think most people would probably say they like the first movie better than the sequels in that trilogy, I would guess.
And it's hard to say. I mean, I love the first one, but like, even I know we're not on audio, but like me holding this in front of you right now as you're watching me record, this is the DeLorean, but the specific one from Back to the Future too.
That's the real one from the movie right there?
Yeah, I shrunk it down.
Marty, I'm sorry, but the only power source capable of generating 1.21 gigawatts of electricity is a bolt of lightning.
What did you say?
A bolt of lightning. Unfortunately, you never know when or where it's ever going to strike.
We do now.
And I also have Biff's car, the one that gets filled with poop.
He called the shit poop.
I'm sure you do have a car filled with poop. That doesn't surprise me in the very least.
So there's my second pick there, buddy. Back to the Future.
I love it. I love it. We've talked about that trilogy and we've talked about Michael J. Fox because I think that, us being Gen Xers, I think most Gen Xers just love Michael J. Fox. And those movies are a big part of why we love them. So
absolutely.
Back to the Future, all three of those movies have a lot of comedy elements. They have some adventure elements. They have a little bit of sci-fi elements. My next movie is a straight up comedy. And that's all it is. It's from you actually mentioned 1989. That's what this is as well. 1989, Christmas Vacation. I should say technically it's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Get the full title right. So
absolute classic.
It is the third movie in the Vacation series. I mean, I guess it's a sequel in that sense. It was written by the 1980s comedy movie genius himself, John Hughes, who someday we'll do a John Hughes Mount Rushmore maybe because he had so many blockbuster movies that he either wrote and directed. He was involved in each of these movies. I'm going to list these out for you. For people that don't know him, in addition to the original National Lampoon's Vacation, there was Christmas Vacation, 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Home Alone, Uncle Buck, and a bunch of other ones. Those are just the ones I cherry picked. But the dude knew how to write a comedy.
I'm going to interrupt you just because on behalf of Gen X, thank you, John Hughes. I mean, you basically just spelled out our childhood.
Oh shit.
Look at how, every one of those movies is good. And every one of those movies was like a pop culture phenomenon at the time.
Absolutely. Each one of them was massive at the time. I mean, let's face it, you can go on to any random cable network and look, and you're probably going to find 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller. They're playing all the time, and they hold up. I've watched all those movies within the last couple of years.
Easily. Me too.
They're all still funny. You know, whether whether it's, you know, teenagers and how they interact with each other, and like Breakfast Club, or more adult stuff like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's just funny. And that translates into the Christmas Vacation movie. He did a great job with that as well. It's probably my favorite Christmas movie of all time. It's one of those I certainly watch every year. This opened the same weekend as Back to the Future 2.
Did it really?
It did.
Wow. I wonder who won.
Well, they were both big hits. I think Back to the Future was a bigger hit than the box office at the time. In fact, I know it was. And
I'm going to bet you're right, just because of the machine that was behind it.
Well, and the fact that it had been 4 years and people were waiting for it, and it was such a big, you know, franchise at the time. The Christmas Vacation movie, you know, obviously became sort of a cult classic and has a life every Christmas and all that. But I'm sure Back to the Future 2 was a bigger box office, you know, blockbuster. But
damn it, where's my DeLorean so I can go back into 1989 just for one weekend, and on one day see Back to the Future Part 2? The next day you head right on back and then watch Christmas Vacation.
Yeah. Get them both in the same weekend. Yeah, you're right. In the theaters, on the big screen.
Hey, Griswold, where do you think you're going to put a tree that big? Bend over and I'll show you.
If any of you are looking for any last-minute gift ideas for me, I'd like Frank Shirley, my boss, right here tonight.
And I want to look him straight in the eye, and I want to tell him what a cheap, lying, no-good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating, inbred, overstuffed, ignorant, blood-sucking, dog-kissing, brainless, dickless, hopeless, heartless, fat-ass, bug-eyed, stiff-legged, spotty-lipped, worm-headed sack of monkey shit he is! Hallelujah! Where's the Tylenol?
There's something about this movie that I bet a lot of people do not know. There was a minor earthquake in LA during the filming of this movie. And there is a scene in the movie that is literally being filmed while the earthquake is happening. And I know you're familiar with this movie. If our listeners are hopefully familiar with this movie too, it's the scene where I think it's like their aunt and uncle are arriving for Christmas dinner. You know, it's closer to the end of the movie, you know, and they, Uncle, what the hell was his name? Like Leo or Lester or whatever the hell is the guy that ends up lighting the match and blowing up the sewer gas at the end. So when those people are arriving at the house, they're at the front entryway of the Griswold family home when they're greeting them as they're coming in. If you watch that movie closely, in that scene, the camera is shaking. You can see the camera shaking back and forth, you know, a little bit. And that's from the earthquake. And they just kept on filming, kept on acting through it. And they left it in as is. For whatever reason, they thought it was a good take. So they left it. So
no shit.
Weird little trivia there. Yeah. So next Christmas, pay attention to that particular scene. It's easy to miss because it's a subtle shake. It's not like the whole room is moving around. But now that you know that,
damn earthquake.
Now that you know that, when you watch it, you'll see there's a little bit of a jostle going on.
Wow.
And there is actually a sequel to this movie that a lot of people don't know about. And I'm not talking about the Vegas Vacation movie either. There is a movie that was on NBC. It was a made-for-TV movie called Christmas Vacation 2. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
It was in 2003. And it focused on Cousin Eddie and his family.
But not the same actor.
Yes. Yeah.
It had Quaid in it?
Yeah. Quaid and his wife, the same lady that plays his wife.
Really?
And their kids. And I've never seen it. And I don't think I ever will. But, you know, but because I've never seen it, who knows? Maybe that could make my Mount Rushmore of sequels. I don't know. I'm guessing it probably wouldn't, but I've never seen it, so I can't say for sure.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even know it existed.
No, most people do not.
Wow.
I doubt you could even find it anywhere, to be honest, but it was made and it aired on NBC.
Made for NBC only.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of that says enough of let's just leave Sleeping Dogs Lie.
Yeah. I mean, I do love Cousin Eddie and Randy Quaid, but I don't think I need a whole movie about him.
No, and especially if it was on NBC, because then it's edited and it's going to be a little too bubblegummy.
Yeah, that too.
It's going to be G-rated if it was for NBC, like a primetime Christmas holiday special. Yeah,
pretty much. Yep.
You're right. So many people would agree with you that is like a absolute tradition when it comes to the Christmas season, they're going to make damn sure they watch Christmas Vacation.
Yeah.
I'm going to dive into 1979 real quick for my next sequel pick. And I don't think I'm going to floor you with this one either. Just, again, you know me well enough to know that I love this franchise yet again. It's Rocky 2.
Yeah.
And, and that's why this is hard, man. Like, if I really sit here and think about it, and I'm not committing to this, I'm just riffing. If I ever had to do like a Mount Rushmore of just movies, that vague, that big of a net. I mean, I'm now talking about Godfather, Back to the Future, and now I'm introducing Rocky, my third pick. These are three just movie franchises that I, to say I love them, I feel like I'm underplaying it. I'm fanatical about all three of these. Rocky especially, and this one I love Rocky 2, and I know a lot of people they would gravitate probably to the original over 2. I just love them because they feel so connected. It really does feel like what we kind of opened the podcast with, a true continuation.
Yeah.
Like it's just one long movie they cut into 2.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it, I'll give credit to how it was filmed. I love how part 2 opens and you're seeing the end of the fight. You're getting like a recap that brings you right back into it, where you're watching the end of the fight between him and Apollo.
What you did was a miracle. You're the luckiest man on the face of the earth. I want you to know that, Stallion.
Do I look lucky?
Look, nobody goes the distance with me. Get up out of that chair, chump, and let's finish this fight right now.
Oh, don't. Please,
Look,
sit
I'm
down.
talking.
Is he serious?
I love how it picks up because now the movie starts with basically both of them in ambulances on the way to the hospital in Philly because they beat the living shit out of each other for 15 rounds in the first movie. I love how you really get to see a deeper version of Apollo Creed and his relentlessness to get revenge, even though he won the first fight. That never satisfied him.
Yeah.
A fun element of this movie is that Rocky tries to retire from boxing because the doctors told him he might lose vision, or because he got hit so many times by Apollo in the same eye. So he tries his hand at acting in commercials, which just becomes a gong show.
Yeah.
East after shave, take 1.
Action.
Go now.
Action.
In the morning, I splash it on, and it makes me smell manly.
Smell manly? Cut. Does that smell manly? Can you read that right?
Yeah.
Let's go again.
Well, excuse
Once
me.
again, fellas.
I know I said it wrong, but it really don't smell manly. I mean, do you think this stuff smells like a man? I say absolutely no.
And I love it because it really does kind of highlight how dumb Rocky Balboa's character is supposed to be. But it's also the struggles of this young couple, Adrian and Rocky. They get married in Rocky 2. And I love all the drama that builds up to the ultimate decision of, yes, we do get to see the rematch.
Yeah.
But I love Rocky, the franchise. I love Rocky Balboa, the character. I love Apollo Creed, played by Carl Weathers. Rest in peace. Now, this is going to sound funny because it's maybe my moment for a soapbox moment about Rocky. It has nothing to do with Rocky 2, so I'm going off on a tangent for a second. There's a little detail that drives me nuts because it's such bad writing. After Apollo gets killed by Drago, when they cut to the actual funeral of Apollo Creed and Rocky is delivering a eulogy standing over his grave at the cemetery, the eulogy that Rocky delivers is the dumbest piece of writing in the whole series. He goes, "He always did everything the way you wanted it. I never understood that, but now I do." He says that, and I'm like, I remember even the first time watching all this, I'm like, whoa. What? Why'd you just say that? Apollo was the exact opposite of that, and I can prove it. Apollo ignored everything that people tried to advise him on. From the very first get-go, his trainer and his whole management team, they didn't want him fighting a southpaw. When he was going through a book of boxers and their names, they went, no, stay away from him. He ignores that. He then pursues the rematch, and they even say, don't do this. You're going to come off like the bad guy. He ignores them. He ignores not fighting Drago when they don't know anything about them. Rocky wouldn't say that because that's not who Apollo was. Now, this is where if you really are intrigued by what I'm talking about, or maybe you've already turned me off.
Yeah.
Go on YouTube and literally search director's extended cut of the eulogy. That's the one that should have been in the movie, because the trainer Duke, who was the whole part of Apollo's whole history as a fighter, he starts by talking about how he was a warrior. He lived like a warrior. He died like a warrior. Then they cut to Rocky now talking, and Rocky basically breaks down and in front of everyone just starts saying how much he really loved Apollo. It was way more appropriate than he always did everything the way you wanted it. Like, come on, who wrote that?
My God, are you still talking?
I'm sorry, I went on and got a sandwich. Are you back?
Had some mustard on your goatee there, you shyster. Well, again, my apologies, but it was like I said, I've been holding that in for a while, and I have an outlet now. You and I host a podcast. I get to piss and moan about the one thing I hate about Rocky, and it's Rocky 4, that scene. Damn it.
Yeah, well, but your pick was Rocky 2, but I guess that's all right. This is your only chance. We're not going to do a... You put it in there. You put it out there. I'll give it to you.
Well, but I am telling you, though, if you do find the alternate version of what Rocky would say at the... It's like, why would they have cut that? That's way more appropriate. Yeah. And it's way more real. Like, it feels real.
I'm not familiar with the... I mean, I've seen the movies multiple times, but I don't know it so well to know exactly what you're saying. So I'll have to go back and check it out. But
I'm one of these guys, probably with Back to the Future specifically and Rocky. I would damn near challenge anybody on planet Earth to like trivia about any of these movies. Try to stump me with the dumbest, smallest detail you can think of. And my hat's off to you if you stump me.
Well, it's a good pick because I appreciate that. And that's another one I thought might be on your list. I didn't necessarily consider it for mine. However, I will say you mentioned that a lot of people like Rocky, would probably say that they like the original Rocky better than the second one. I think I maybe like the second one better than the first one, because it gives a bit deeper dive into Apollo's life and his story. Yeah. And ultimately, you know, Rocky's the ultimate good guy. And at the end of the spoiler alert, at the end of the fight, at the end of the movie, he wins the fight. So I think a lot of people would appreciate that part of it and the building of Rocky as a fighter, let alone the character. Anyway, but yeah, good pick. I'll move into my fourth pick already here now. I'm going to surprise you with my fourth pick, believe it or not. And a lot of people would be surprised by this as well. It's going to be out of left field a little bit. My fourth pick for movie sequels is Silence of the Lambs.
What?
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs. Wait a minute. Let me...
wait a minute.
Wait. Let me check the... Yeah, we're doing movie sequels, are we not? What are you talking about?
We indeed
and you
are.
know how much I love Silence of the Lambs. What are you saying?
So Silence of the Lambs is indeed a sequel. And I was on and I knew this for a fact. I knew that it was a sequel. A lot of people have forgotten the movie that came first. It was a movie called Manhunter. And Silence of the Lambs came out in 1991. Manhunter was from 1986, and it was not a big blockbuster hit.
No.
That's why it's probably the forgotten first movie in this series. So so this movie came to my mind when I was thinking about sequels, because I knew that it was a sequel. At least in my brain, I knew that it was a sequel, but I was still on the fence about it because I did a little bit of research on this, and there is actually quite a bit of debate online about whether or not this is a true sequel. It's not an obvious pick. It is the second movie in the series. It does follow the story, as we talked about at the beginning of our episode. It follows the story that took place. It has the same characters. It features Hannibal Lecter. It has Jack Crawford, some other characters. They're in the first movie, and they're also then again in the second movie. The first movie, again, from 1986, this is something that a lot of people may not realize, is that Hannibal was played by Brian Cox from Succession and a lot of other things. Well, excellent guy in Succession. He was the original Hannibal, and it does take place before the events of Silence of the Lambs. So it's a true sequel in that sense. Both the movies were based on novels, and the novels came in that order as well. So the Silence of the Lambs was the second novel in the series. The reason why people online debate it and think, oh, it's not the same, because they're such different movies. Like stylistically, it's a different movie. It's a different feel. It's a different look. It's a different take on the book, even
different cast.
In a different
everything.
cast.
You're right, and that's why I at first I thought you were trying to pull a trick here, but you are accurate. I'm one of those that as soon as you said it, you just kind of froze my brain because I'm like, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah.
And I've only seen what is it? I don't even know that Manhunter once. And I watched it after I had seen Silence of the Lambs and I was so underwhelmed.
Yeah.
That's probably why I'm like, no, that's trash.
They actually remade Manhunter and in 2000, I think it was like 2002, and they actually named the movie after the original book, and it was Red Dragon. So people that are familiar with the Red Dragon movie, Red Dragon is a legitimate prequel to Silence of the Lambs, but it's also a remake, which another thing that backs up my opinion that it's a sequel, because it's a remake of the original movie.
Can you repeat the part of the stuff where you said all about the things?
Ultimately, I had to settle the debate, and I made a point to ask the person in my life who knows the most about these movies, and she's seen them all the most, by far the more times than anybody else that I can think of. She's also read all the books, I believe, and it's my wife, Susan. And she said she thought about it for a while. She didn't come up right away because she, sort of like you, she kind of scratched her head and thought, you know what? Yeah, it's a sequel. And that was good enough for me because she is definitely the expert.
Here's where I envy your pick. Now, if I had to do bold statement alert, if I had to do a Mount Rushmore of my favorite movies I've seen in my life, Silence of the Lambs is going to be in that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's so well done. That is a brilliant movie. And I've seen it God knows how many times. I have a fascination with Buffalo Bill. You know that.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again. Now it places the lotion in the basket.
Please.
Put the fucking lotion in the basket!
Just Ted Levine playing that dude. It's so perfect, but so is Anthony Hopkins. So is Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
That I put it in the same category as a Shawshank Redemption. It's like a perfect movie.
Yeah. Jonathan Demme directed it, and he did an excellent job with it as well.
I won't waste your time or Catherine's time bargaining for petty privileges. Clarice Starling and that awful Jack Crawford have wasted far too much time already. I only pray they haven't doomed the poor girl. Apparently, Lewis had murdered a transient and done things with the skin. Oh, and Senator, just one more thing. Love your suit.
Maybe I'm just upset that you snuck it in as a pick on sequels when, man, I've just never viewed it that way, but it is in fact a sequel, so I can't dispute it.
You know, there's a lot of people that are going to be surprised by that pick, but it's a legit pick. It's a sequel, and it's a great movie. It's a great standalone movie, and frankly, it is a lot better movie than Manhunter. You know, there's debate online of whether or not it's a horror movie. I think it's more of a thriller than a horror movie. It's probably the best thriller movie, maybe of all time. I think that's in that debate.
Well, it's one of those movies that when you get done watching it for the very first time, you're forever affected. By the time you're done watching Silence of the Lambs, whether you want to admit it or not, you're a little more fucked in the head than you were before you started it.
Wow. And not necessarily in a bad way, because it is that entertaining.
It's not like you're going to run around and start making skin suits and, killing women.
We've talked about this phenomenon in the past. It's one of those movies that I would love to be able to watch it again for the first time, not knowing anything about it. You just sit down and you're like, it comes on and you get to enjoy it for the first time all over again. It's too
if you
bad
could have the Men in Black memory eraser.
Yeah.
I would, you know what? Put me in line. I'll wait to see Silence of the Lambs for the first time again.
Yeah.
100%.
So you know this movie very well. I bet I got a couple of weird facts to throw at you. You may not know this. So again, Manhunter came first. They knew they were going to make a sequel because it was the second book in the series. Originally, Silence of the Lambs was supposed to be directed by and starred Gene Hackman as Jack Crawford.
Ooh.
And the reason why that he was so heavily involved is he was all in on the story. He put up like $500,000 of his own money to secure the rights to the book and to get the movie made. So he was all in with his own checkbook to try and get this thing done. But as they started to write the script for the actual movie, it became a little darker, it became a little more twisted, and it became a little more violent than he wanted. It wasn't really his style. So he ended up backing out of everything. He pulled his money out. He's not going to direct it, not going to star in it. So they ended up having to redo all of that stuff and find new. And it's probably for the better because Jonathan Demme did such a great job directing it. There's also a couple of weird casting choices with Clarice. There was 2 actresses that were offered that role before turning it down, and they both turned it down because they both agreed it was too gruesome and too violent of a movie. Oh no! Michelle Pfeiffer and Meg Ryan. They both were offered the role of Clarice Starling and said, just a little too much, just a little too dark for me. So they didn't want it.
Man, what a weird, I wonder if they have regrets on that. I mean, I know they always will say no, but that was the kind of role that changed Jodie Foster's life.
Absolutely. How can you not have regrets about that? Meg Ryan had a big career herself. Michelle Pfeiffer's career wasn't quite as big. That probably could have helped her a lot.
And especially working with Anthony Hopkins firing on all cylinders as Hannibal Lecter, who was nothing short of brilliant in that role.
That movie swept the Academy Awards that year. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and Best Actress.
Yeah, it had to. See, every once in a while they get it right. And that year they got it right.
Yeah, that's my last pick. I guess we're down to your final, right?
All right. Well, I'm going to end it definitely more lighthearted. we're bringing you through the whole train of emotions today. I am going to finish from a movie that was made in 95. And I'll never forget hearing that it was coming out and that they were doing it because my excitement started to build. And then when you finally do get to see it, wow, did it not disappoint? And I am talking about Grumpier Old Men.
Awesome. That's great.
And I know my wife Molly would 100% back me on this pick because it would be on her Mount Rushmore, certainly of sequels and possibly even of just movies in general because she loves these 2 movies. And I love the chemistry between Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon as these roles. I mean, they're perfect. We've talked about them before. I picked them and put them on my non-music duo Mount Rushmore, and this is still very much a big reason as to why. It's because of the 2 Grumpy Old Men movies. Yeah. And I love that in Grumpier Old Men, yeah, they're still grumpy, but more of the plot line is them aligning as like a team to target Spaghetti Rigetti's cousin, Maria Sophia Coletta Rigetti Goldman. She's not Goldman at the start of the movie, but she takes over Chuck's bait shop and turns it into an Italian restaurant along the lake when for their whole lives that was a bait shop. And so they kind of unite their grumpy powers to try to take her out. But meanwhile, Max Goldman falls in love with her. And then everything else that just kind of fills in the blanks is nothing short of brilliant. It's nothing short of just hysteria as far as the comedy that these guys provide on screen, along with the old dude Burgess Meredith, which happened to be his last role in any movie before he passed away at the age of God, I forgot how old he was, but it was in 1997. So it was 2 years after Grumpier Old Men had come out. Wow. Burgess Meredith, who happens to be a big part of my pick before this, because he was Mick and Rocky.
Yeah. They are 2 movies that are close to Minnesotans' hearts, having been filmed in Minnesota
Absolutely.
For the most part, and then also, takes place in Minnesota, small town Minnesota. So they're always going to be important to us, those those movies. I wish they had made a third one.
Oh, yeah, because it would have been great. They're the first movie I really can have like a real memory of in the theater, staying in your seat to watch the outtakes.
Yeah,
from the first one, and do they hit you with it again after the second one, and it's just as good. It's worth the wait.
100%.
What do you say we go back to my place, and I'll show you my spicy, peppy pepperoni? What do you say we go back to my house, and I'll show you my man-sized manicotti?
She's nothing but a pig-headed Italian with...
Okay, go. One more from the top and a little bit more out of breath, yeah?
If I was more out of breath, I'd be dead.
You're still a putz.
That's my line!
How would you like my bony macaroni? Or my fatty Alfredo? Or my hard salami? I got them all.
I've always heard this story of Walter Matthau in particular, and him. I think because Kevin Pollak in those movies, Kevin Pollak is a master at impressions. He just he's one of the best, and he does a perfect Walter Matthau impression. And I've seen interviews with him where he's talking about that, and he said when he first met Walter Matthau on the set for the first movie, and he was kind of surprised a little bit that this actor who had been around for, at that point in time, probably 50 years, he's done like 100 movies, one of the most esteemed actors of all time, why he would be, trekking up to Minnesota in the winter to film this little comedy movie. And apparently Walter Matthau told him something along the lines, I don't know the exact wording, but he said something like, "Kid, I owe my bookie $2 million." or $2 million at the track or something like that. He said he needed the money for his gambling habits. And Pollak said, as he got to know him better, he's like, "Oh no, that was definitely true." He was
You know what I've learned over the years? If you ever get a chance, listener, or you, John, for that matter, if you're ever just tooling around on YouTube, if you see any podcast or any show for that matter where Kevin Pollak is the guest, I don't know if there's a better storyteller than that dude.
Yeah.
My God, he just knows how to tell things. So when you were saying this about the bookie, I can just envision Kevin Pollak telling the story because he just knows how to do it. If that's maybe a vague way to say it, but the dude is a great storyteller, and it's random. Kevin Pollak's just kind of one of those guys, right? He's one of those actors. We all know him. We've all seen him in a ton of different things.
Yeah.
He's never bad at anything.
Yeah.
But he get him off, script, and now he's Kevin Pollak, the actor. That dude has seen some shit.
Oh yeah, because he's never been the star, but he's been with all these massive legends, and he's
the big guns.
Yeah, and he's full of stories, and when he tells the stories, he can talk like them because he's a master impressionist too.
Yeah, so, he's funny as hell.
He's hilarious.
A great guy, great role. He's Max's son in Grumpy Old Men and Grumpier Old Men.
Man, great pick. God, I hadn't even thought of that one for this list. It did not come to mind.
Well, now at least I struck back because you really hit me out of left field with Silence of the Lambs. So at least I shocked you a little bit because I do feel like 3 of my 4 picks you probably saw coming.
Yeah, to some degree, I certainly did. Rocky, I didn't forget about Rocky, but I figured it might be on your list. The other 2 I was more sure of, but you at least you were able to surprise me with one.
Do you have any honorable mentions that you want to make sure that you mention so that you just feel that you have a clear conscience that you at least said them?
Yeah, basically, I'm not going to talk much about these. One of them was Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, his versions of the Superman movies.
Yeah,
I think the Superman 2 was a lot better than the original Superman movie. Just so you know,
I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's with the
100%.
The 3 alien.
Kneel before Zod.
Yes. I actually just watched that movie within the last year, and I like it a lot. I was thinking about T2, Terminator 2, but I talked about that movie in our episode of sci-fi movies, so I didn't want to go back to that. So other than that, and those were the 2 main ones. Empire Strikes Back I thought about too, but I'm pretty happy with the 4 I chose. I don't feel the need to squeeze any honorable mentions in, to be honest.
T2 is definitely something I considered. Another one, and I'll end it with this, would be Kill Bill Volume 2.
Oh, sure.
Here's kind of why I didn't pick it. I love it that much where it really was in consideration, but if you know about how Tarantino filmed Kill Bill, it actually was never intended to be 2 movies. It's just, it ended up being, 4+ hours. And then he made the decision, I'm going to make it Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Sure. Yep.
So it was never intended to be a sequel. So I tried to find like a technicality to keep it off my list. But do I love those movies.
Yeah. Both great movies.
So great episode. Man, did we discuss some powerhouse motion pictures, as they call them, in this episode. And there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen anything that we've talked about, 1, shame on you. But 2, it's fixable. Get in front of a screen and watch these, damn it.
All right.
All right.
Now you're starting to threaten our listeners. I appreciate that.
Damn! And after, again, weeks of cold calling to find sponsors, I would like to thank our sponsor for this lovely episode, Bear Whiz beer.
Come on.
My list of fake sponsors is getting dumber by the day.
Yeah, because it started out so strong.